Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and I'm here to do my weekly entertainment wrap-up for March 22nd through 28th. This week I read 3 books, I watched 4 shows, I watched 6 movies, I listened to 1 podcast, and I listened to 2 books. Most of what I read this week was finished during the 24 and 48 last weekend, and then this weekend is the first edition of the Queer Lit Weekend, which is what we're calling Queer Weekends. Ooh, the sun is super inconsistent today, cool. Also, because I can't go to work right now, I obviously watched a lot more than I usually watch in a week, so let's just get into it. The first book I finished was The Only Child. This is a Korean thriller that has a few different points of view that we follow. We follow a few arson investigators at the beginning, and then we follow this woman who is going to see this serial killer because he's the only person that she'll talk to, and then we're also following this child, and they all end up being interconnected. Because it is a thriller, I don't feel like I can discuss too much more of the plot, really, but this kind of went exactly how you think it's going to go, or at least how I thought it was going to go, but at the same time was really enthralling, and I really just kept wanting to read it and read it and read it and find out if I was correct. Also, I want to know how it was going to end, because that was definitely up in the air. This week I also read Weightless by Yewon. This is a novel written in poetry, and it has to deal with sexual assault, so if that's not something you want to read about, obviously I would skip this one. The protagonist in this novel is non-binary. It goes to a party, ends up being drugged and raped by more than one person, and it's all about them getting through that and whether or not they can trust anybody and whether or not they can tell anybody about it. It was incredibly heartbreaking, but also a very quick read because it was poetry. This is being published by a very small press, and I believe it comes out next month. This week in my bathtub I also read The Handmaid's Tale, the graphic novel edition, because when you're in the middle of apocalyptic type time frame, why not read something like that? The reason I read it is because I had put it on hold weeks and weeks and weeks ago from the library, and it was just one of the things that happened to be in as a hold on my last day when the library was still open. So I figured I did ask for it, I should read it. I have read the actual book before, although I haven't seen the TV show yet, and I felt that this adaptation was done very, very well. I enjoyed the art in it, and it was interesting to revisit this world, even though it's not exactly the best time frame for it, depending on how you're feeling. This week we also watched another episode of Man in the High Castle. This is the type of show that we can really only watch 1 episode at a time because it is very heavy, because the premise is that it is set in the 60s, but the Germans and the Japanese won the Second World War, so there's espionage going on in the States, there's Nazis everywhere. It's hard to watch. And we'll get back to Nazis later with a little bit of a funny story, which is not something that I typically associate with Nazis. My roommate and I also long distance watched another episode of Better Call Saul. This show is just brilliant. I am thoroughly enjoying watching it with him because he loves it, I love it. The characters are always super interesting and intricate, all the situations are interesting, and I can't wait to see what happens next. I also caught up on the latest episode of Survivor. I'm really interested to see what's going to happen with The Merge, which is coming next week, as well as if and when somebody is going to get back in the game, what all of these fire tokens mean. It's got me engaged. And then everybody here finished off the first and so far only season of Living With Yourself, which is the Paul Rudd and Paul Rudd show. This ended in a very interesting place, which I am definitely not going to spoil for anyone that wants to watch it, but it made me go, oh, of course that's the season finale, because I just want to know how this situation is going to play out. On to the movies we watched. After we watched that 1 episode of Man on the High Castle, we were like, okay, we want to watch something that doesn't have Nazis. Let's put on this random comedy called Longshot. So we start playing it, and the first scene is with neo-Nazis, and we're like, wait, why is this happening? But it's because in the Longshot, Seth Rogen plays this journalist who has been infiltrating this Nazi group for an article and ends up escaping it, and then it ends up being about something completely different. But we were just like, can we not escape the Nazis? Is that not a thing we can do right now? This was your typical rom-com with some action elements, some feminist elements. I really enjoyed it. It was a good time. Comedy is really getting us through these times. It's pretty much what we put on right before we fall asleep so that our dreams aren't super weird, because we're also playing Half-Life Alyx in a VR, so we're constantly shooting zombies and things, and you need something lighter right before bed. A mistake we made was watching The Platform right before bed. This is a Spanish movie about this person who wakes up in this room with another another person. You're going to be in that room for the next 30 days. There's a platform that goes through the room, and there are many levels above you and many levels below you. You don't know how many levels in total, but you know that the people at the very top get the platform first. The platform has all of the food for everybody on it, and you can only eat the food when it is at your level. So if you try to steal some food and eat it later, weird things happen in your room. After 30 days, you wake up on a completely different level. It seems to be at random. Nobody knows exactly where you're going to go. A lot of people end up just hurling themselves through the middle of the floor or killing their roommates. This was a lot to watch when you're on quarantine with, you know, one or two other people, because you're like, oh, this is art imitating life right now. Okay. It was also very heavy-handed. It was an interesting movie. It didn't really wrap up in a way that was satisfactory. So know all of those things before going into it. What you doing, sunshine? What you doing? The next 4 movies are just other comedies that we put on just before going to bed so that we wouldn't have zombie dreams. I'm just going to go through them really quickly. I don't think I've watched any of these, although I might have watched the last one because I got the twist pretty early on. Those other 4 comedies were Dinner for Schmucks, Game Night, Life of the Party, and Death at a Funeral. All of these were very entertaining. There was some secondhand embarrassment in probably just about all of them. But I definitely enjoyed my time with all of them. There was some outdated stuff in some of them are from like 10 years ago. But if you're just looking for something to calm your brain down so it doesn't worry dream, this is how to do it. One podcast I listened to this week was the 2nd episode of Our Plague Year. This is a podcast put on by Joseph Fink from the Welcome to Night Vale fame, and it's basically him coping with what is happening, keeping up with current events, but it's not all about the news and the numbers. It is about people and how they are experiencing it. Meg Bashorner, who you would also know from Welcome to Night Vale, had an essay in this one that actually made me cry, so that's good. By that I mean that's really good art, and it also made me really connect with other people out in the world from the comfort and safety of the living room of the house I am currently staying in. On to the books I listened to this week, the first one being These Witches Don't Burn. This was a quick audiobook for me because I basically listened to it all in one day. As you might guess from the title, this does involve witches, this does involve teenage witches. There's a coven in the small town of Salem, Massachusetts. You might have heard of it before, you might have heard of it in a witchy context before. And essentially these witches don't do anything bad, but they do have to keep themselves hidden for obvious reasons, and then things keep happening where it seems like somebody is attacking the coven. We're also right in the midst of our protagonist trying to deal with the heartbreak of her girlfriend. She broke up with her girlfriend because she did something terrible in New York on a trip. We don't exactly know what it was when we start out, but we know that we don't want anything to do with her. So there's tension with their magic, there's tension with romantic lives, there's more cute girls that come into the picture. All of it is interesting. This is the beginning of at least a duology, and I now just really want to read the next book and see what happens. The final audiobook I listened to was Queenie. This is a mental health read about this girl named Queenie who lives in London. She is black, her boyfriend is white, and this causes some tension because he's a dickhead. He decides that they should go on a break, so she is forced to move out of her apartment. She's having some tough times dealing with this, and one of the ways that she deals with it is by disassociating, by having random sex with people. She also goes through some friend drama at this time. She's having a hard time at work. She's having a hard time with all of these dudes that just want to use her body but not treat her like a person. And then she also has a plethora of family issues, so it's not a great time for her. This was an excellent mental health read, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I just loved seeing the process of her going through all of this and finally seeking the help that she needs. There was also a portion of this that I was listening to while I was driving to drop off something for somebody in quarantine, and I'm glad that I was by myself because I ended up just yelling at one of the characters because he was the absolute worst. And then I was talking to a friend about it, and they were like, yeah, I used to date a person exactly like it and felt so seen and heard when I read this book because that situation is just so gross. Essentially, while Queenie was in this relationship with this white boy, his family was super racist, but he would never stand up for her, and she would storm out about it because obviously, and he would just put all of the blame on wrecking the situation on her instead of his racist uncle. And all of that made me incredibly mad and made me want to punch things, so I am so sorry for the people that have to deal with that in real life all the goddamn time. That's it for this week, but I did want to let you know that as of Wednesday, I am going to be posting a very important video, so I hope that you will check it out. If you haven't already subscribed, you should do that and maybe check the notification bell just so you get that notification, because it's going to be an interesting time. Have you read, watched, or listened to any of these? Let me know about it down in the comments below. If you don't want to leave a comment but want me to know that you're here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face with your keyboard. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye!